Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Back with you with part 2 of this spirit-led teaching. And always remember, test the spirit to see whether it be of God, which is Christ. Because if it ain't spirit-led, it's dead. 1 John 4:1 says we are to test the spirit to see whether it be of God. Okay, and for that spirit to be of God, for that ministering spirit to be of God, according to Romans 8:9, it has to be of Christ, because the Spirit of God is the Spirit of Christ. Okay, so don't let anyone unlawfully use the letter of Christ. We're not in the letter anymore. We're in the dispensation of the light. Bible-based religion was of Christ, but that's now in time past. We have to go from the Bible of Christ by sight to the eternal reality of Christ, which is salvation by faith, His faith. His faith. So test the spirit to see whether it be of Christ. Because once again, if it ain't spirit-led, it's dead. Christ comes to you by revelation of the Spirit. The enemy comes to you, Antichrist comes to you unlawfully and hiding behind the letter of the Spirit. Here's how you catch him every time. Jesus said, let your light shine. Light is him in his original state, his eternal state as the Christ. When you let your light shine, you're going to always catch the work of the enemy, because he can only use the letter to hide behind. Satan ain't got no light. He got to hide behind something to deceive, and it's the letter that he's using. He's using biblical inspiration to blind people to the light of the gospel. He's pushing you to live a life that you don't have. You don't have a best life to live. He wants you to pursue your best life when there's only the Christ life. Living is we only experience living as Christ lives through us. Anything outside of that, we're existing. Okay, we're existing, and we might be pursuing provision and enjoying ourselves, but we don't have the ability to enjoy life because we have no life outside of Christ. Enjoying yourself is not enjoying life. We are not life. The Christ life is a gift to us. That's the grace of God that we fell from. That's the grace of God we have to be restored back to. Part 2 of this teaching, discerning between corruption, which is Satan, and uncorruption, which is Christ. Corruption being the law of sin and death, which is the law that governs the financial system of the world. The law of life is in Christ Jesus, which is above the law of sin and death. This is where we're in the system of faith, where we take possession of the material world by faith. We take possession of the material world by faith, and then everything manifests to the seed of God by sight. If you are in Christ, you are the seed of God. Romans 9:8. Romans 9:8, once again, for they that are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of God, but the children of the promise are counted as the seed. Those that are in the promise, that are in Christ, they're counted as the seed. Romans 8:8, for they that are in the flesh cannot please God. Why cannot they that are in the flesh not please God? Because God is not flesh, He's spirit. God is not flesh, He's spirit. Now remember, the letter was given to us in the flesh. So if you're following the letter in the flesh, you're not pleasing to God through Christ in the Spirit, because you're outside of the life of Christ. Romans 8:9. But you are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if so be that the Spirit of Christ dwell in you, pertaining to the flesh. But we in Him pertaining to the Spirit. Now, if any have not the Spirit of Christ, they're none of His. They're none of His. It don't matter what church you go to. It don't matter what church you're a member of. It does not matter. You can pray all the time. There's a difference between saying prayers and having a prayer life. Don't you know a sinner can say prayers, but the Lord will not regard the prayer of iniquity? in the gospel, we have the gift of a prayer life, because we're in a prayer life is in when you're in fellowship with him at all times. People, we have to have a prayer life. Okay, because outside of a prayer life, it says we don't know what we should pray for. We're praying for things that we're not receiving. And if you're praying for it out of sin and you're receiving it, then you're receiving it unlawfully, because it's sin that's giving it to you. Satan can't manifest nothing to you, because everything by Satan is by sight. Nothing comes by manifestation of faith. Everything by him is by sight. And he causes you to lust for it. But lust gives birth to sin, and it's going to make you happy for a while, but sin going to bring forth death. That's going to be the end of it. That's going to be the end of it. Whatever little thrill it brought you for the moment is gone. You got it, but it ain't doing nothing for you no more. So we got to be careful. Happiness is circumstantial, and based on how we feeling. We don't get caught up in what we feel. Now, we want to be in good circumstances. Okay, we want to have sufficient provision to be able to have for ourselves and be able to help others in need if they're worthy of it. If they're worthy of it. Okay. Okay, let us go to Matthew 6, 24, 25. Matthew 6, 24, 25. 24 says, no man can serve two masters. For either, and that includes woman as well. No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. You can't be in the flesh pursuing provision and in the spirit pursuing Christ at the same time. See, you can't serve them both. You can't serve corruption and uncorruption at the same time. You see, we must not get caught up in the moment of the superficiality of the materialism of the world. It's nice to have a big bank account. There's nothing wrong with having a big bank account and being able to provide sufficiency for your family and have sufficiency in the provision of the world which belongs to Christ. But just because you have the provision of the world and you may be in a goodly position, it does not mean Christ gave it to you. You see, Satan uses those things to make us think we're blessed because of those things, and that's dangerous. Okay, have it, but don't get caught up in the moment of it, because we have to put all things in divine perspective, which means eternal perspective. Remember Solomon. The Lord told Solomon that there would not be a man before him richer than him, and there would never be a man after him more richer than Solomon. And Solomon inspired the book of Ecclesiastes. And this man said, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. He talked about how the Lord gave him so much that anything his eyes saw, he didn't withhold it, which means there's nothing he saw that he could not have. And at the end of it all, he called it vanity, because he found no fulfillment in it. He found no contentment in it, because it was all vanity, because he had everything in the flesh, but was outside of purpose in the spirit. He was empty. He was empty. He talked about the deceitfulness of trying to find contentment in comfort. You see, we ain't going to find contentment in comfort, because we're seeking contentment in corruption when we do that. But when we're circumcised from the curse and back in the blessing, then guess what? We find comfort in contentment. Now we ain't got to pursue nothing by sight. Now we ain't got to pursue comfort by sight. Trying to find contentment in comfort. Now we have comfort We find comfort in contentment, and our contentment is Christ. Contentment is fulfillment of knowing you're going to be here and knowing you have an eternal purpose in this material world. Okay, in this material world. So no, we can't serve the world system and be in faith at the same time. We can't walk by sight and by faith at the same time. 2 Corinthians 5:7 says we walk by faith, not by sight. Okay. Let's go to 25. 25 says, therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what you shall eat or what you shall drink, nor yet for your body, what you shall put on. Is not the life more than the meat, and the body the raiment? The life is more than the meat, and the body more than the raiment. Who dwells in the body? Christ. And the life is more than the meat. Well, who's the life? Christ. Because outside of Christ, there is no life. Outside of Christ, there is no life. Matthew 6:63. Matthew 6:33, It is the Spirit that makes, Matthew 6:33. Seek first the kingdom of heaven and its riches, its righteousness in the Spirit, and all these things will be added unto you. What's added unto us? The provision of Christ, which is in the world. When we're circumcised into the prosperity of Christ by faith, and Christ is the author of that work, we are in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. We are in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. That's where the spiritual blessings are. Blessings are spiritual. Blessings are not natural. The financial and material good of the world follow our blessings. The financial and material good of the world come to the Christian because he's blessed. Okay? But those things don't make us blessed, because the world has those things, but not Christ. Are the children of the world blessed? No, it's impossible for the children of the world to be blessed, because Romans 9:8 says that they which are the children of the flesh, these are not the children of God. They're not the children of God. You are only a child of God by the Spirit of God. And that brings us to a conclusion of part 2 of these teachings. Love you in the Lord. See you in part 3.